Sounds good. Well, I have an Alaskan, and you know what? I'm not paid to sponsor it. I'm just going to hold it up in front of the camera and hope they retroactively pay me later. So,
Yep.
Alaskan beers, this is for you. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the special Nurgly Rotting Demonic 7th episode of Warped Wednesday. This is your host, Mike Pestilens, with your other host, Wallace O'Donnell. Wallace, my friend,
Hey,
how are you doing today?
I've been better, buddy. I've been better. Still got my broken hand from those who have not been informed. I don't know if I have been on an episode since that happened, but I have a
I don't think
broken
so.
hand.
Yeah, first episode.
Yep.
Because last week, because of personal reasons, we weren't able to make it. But how do you break your hand? Probably moving too many models will play in your Zangor list. Just all that effort, you eventually strained it.
Yeah, just lifting all the horde models,
That's
just
true.
literally putting all of them on my back.
Yeah, carrying the chaos community.
So I broke my hand, and then I was in recovery for about a week. And then when I flew back to Fairbanks, which is where I live, I got COVID on the plane ride home. So that was fun. So I got back and then
You'd be
just
like
very
that sometimes.
sick, and I'm currently in quarantine. So
yeah, I know we're all rooting for you, all hoping you feel better, and spending all our Nurgly hugs your way, my friend.
And I promise that's probably the last Nurgle related thing I have to talk about on this episode, because there's another particularly mischievous chaos god that has my interest of late.
Well,
and I think
let's go ahead. Let's change the subject.
Yeah. So welcome to our first Tzeentch episode.
Yeah. Really, our 7th episode, actually our 9th episode.
Yeah.
But every episode is our 9th episode when we're talking about Tzeentch. Before we dive into our main subject, Wallace, my friend, what have you been hobbying on, or what's been your hobby involvement over the last week?
My hobby involvement has been repairing my Abaddon because its sword broke. And
are you talking about the new model, or do you have one of those tiny little?
Oh no, I have the new model, and,
okay, cool.
They were very well painted by a friend of mine. But
amazing.
Unfortunately, my my overeager nephew got their hands on the model at one point, and it lost a few pieces. So I was trying to reassemble it.
Yeah, kids are always very dangerous around models, both for the kids and the models. It's a lose-lose situation.
It is. So getting my Abaddon back to standard to play on the tabletop.
Sounds fair.
Was one thing.
If you don't fix that sword, I'm going to find every game you play. I'm going to call you out for modeling for advantage. Just so you know.
I will be, for sure. I'm gonna pose him so that he's like crouched down, really tiny, and he's trying to hide behind like a little piece of wall.
Yeah. You just grind up the miniature and put little like pieces of plastic on the base. You're like, this is my Abaddon. He can
it's
hide.
all GW. You just grind it up.
Pieces, yeah. Even with the
Abaddon
GW paint. Yeah.
I'll take a video of it and show people. I'll be like, that's the model. That's legal. I just posed it the way I wanted it. It's just a blended up paste. But I fixed my Abaddon. I started work on my baby knights. I need to make quite a few Chaos Knight babies.
Yeah.
And figuring out whether or not I'm gonna try to magnetize them. We'll see.
Oh, definitely magnetize them.
So it seems like it's easy.
Yeah, it seems knights are really straightforward to magnetize, and you get the biggest, bang for your buck in terms of time put to points magnetized. Definitely magnetize those, especially because the game changes quickly. One thing you're paying for war gear, the next day, someone makes all of your war gear free, and you regret building all your Plague Marines with bolters and realize you have a bunch of unplayable Plague Marines, and you sit there and you write angry emails to GWFAQ team.
One day, all of your demon models are overcosted. Then they drop a field guide with new points, and none of it changes. So, life is constantly throwing curveballs.
That's true. So I was so excited for the data slate to see what was going to come through demon. I mean, I can't make those literally the army I wanted most to get changes, because I know all the other armies were in pretty good spots. Plus, Space Marines are getting new stuff. I was so excited for demons, but I don't want to dwell too much on this. Tzeentch always keeps us moving forward. So for everyone, my hobby recap over the last week, I have a lot of Warp Talons. I have a weird amount of warp talons. I have a genuinely unhealthy amount of warp talons. If you knew how many warp talons I had, you would probably call someone to come check on me, do a welfare check, because I have a lot of warp talons. The point I'm trying to make. Most of them are unpainted. Some of them have gone smashed in the move, so I'm kind of building those back up. I'm going to paint them up. I don't think warp talons are the best option in the new codex, but I think they're perfectly fine. And I think there's a world in which I may need 30 warp talons, and if that world comes, I'll be more than prepared. Cool.
What is that world? It's like an Emperor's Children world, I'm guessing.
It's like a Night Lord's world where we're playing
Night Lords don't.
tournaments.
That's the weird thing about Night Lords is they don't really have things that make warp talons a thing you want.
Cool. I love the way you said the weird thing of Night Lords, as if you haven't read the omnibus and just seen like a million weird things about
there's like 10 weird things. So Night Lords really like raptors because they have
like
fearsome aura.
Yep.
Which warp talons don't have.
I love the way there's like a guardsman chilling, like a warp talon shows up. He's like, "Hey, buddy, I'm not scared. Like, we'll fight, but I'm not scared at all. I'm feeling good about this fight."
Yeah, I mean, according to the lore, he just spasms his arms around to fly. So
yeah,
like a big discoordinated chicken.
Speaking of discoordinated chickens, we will be talking about demons later in the episode.
Yes.
Before we get there, I think there's a game we started last episode that we're going to continue playing every week. It's called Guess That Relic, or maybe Guess That Warlord Trait.
Whose Hellforged artifact is it anyway? Yeah. So I got one for you today, Mike, and this is coming right off the dome here.
So for those that don't remember last week, just a quick thing. The way the game works is Wallace or I will find an artifact or a warlord trait and we'll read its description. Not the actual description of what it does in the rules, but like the little flavor text. And the other person has to guess the relic from the description. Now this is surprisingly hard. Very, very hard. But we've got two of Chaos's brightest minds here for you today at Warphammer. So Wallace, so you want to start us off? What demonic delight do you have for me?
You get a hint that it's a Zenich relic, because otherwise you're not going to get this one.
Okay.
I mean, the hint is already in what I'm going to tell you. It exists in 9 times 9 dimensions.
Wait, hold up. Is this the flavor text, or are you just kind of making
this is the flavor text?
Okay.
It exists in 9 times 9 dimensions. And it is infused by the sorcerous powers of its holder. What am I?
Wait, that's the whole description?
That's the whole description.
Like every single Zinch thing is infused by the sorcerer's power. What kind of a lame description is
But not everything exists in 9 times 9 dimensions, buddy.
Infused? Is it? Hold up.
There's a good lead in there.
Dimensions. Is it infused with the sorcerer's prowess? I'm actually going to limb here. I think I can probably guess this one. It's probably some sort of book. Is it the Crystal Tome?
So close. It's the Warpfire Blade.
The Warpfire Blade.
The Warpfire Blade on a wound roll of 6 cuts through dimensions to do mortal wounds to its target. So,
okay, but just D3 mortal wounds.
It's only D3 mortal wounds.
Honestly, really, they should make a special D9 just for that relic. And you do D9 mortal wounds.
Yeah, okay. They should made it damage 9, because that would have been funny to me.
Damage is 99. Just one shots anything in the game.
Just dead. It's just gone.
Well, it should, hold up. 1 attack, strength 1, AP 0, 99 damage. So it's very unlikely to get through. But if it does get through, just your thing is dead.
It's a meme.
Dead. Yeah.
Oh man, imagine. That'd be funny. Kind of like a reverse impossible robe.
Cool.
There's actually, not to get too far on a tangent after the game, but I did want to mention that there's a certain kind of problem similar to that in AOS right now. In AOS, they have these very powerful endless spells that your mages can bring to the table. And one of the ones that's a little bit overtuned in competitive play is the Purple Sun of Shayesh or whatever. And one of the rules to that particular endless spell is that if you're within 3 inches of it,
You roll a dice, and on a roll of a 1, your model or the unit that's within 3 is just removed.
No way. Oh,
It's just gone. So you can like
that's
you can like
unfortunate.
yeah, and you get to move it pretty far when you summon it. So you can like drop it in the middle of your opponent's army and just watch them just go ooh,
Yeah.
as they like clench up, hoping that their like 20 wound special character guy doesn't just roll
Yeah.
to 1 and get goobered.
That's fair.
But
okay.
I thought that's goofy fun.
Yeah, I would just forfeit any game because I'm just have an amazing knack for rolling ones. I just guaranteed my entire army just disappears into the warp. Okay, Wallace, I found a relic with the biggest gap possible between the coolness of its flavor text and like the effect it actually has on the tabletop, which it might be too much of a hint, but I'm just going to give it to you. And you can't guess the description; you have to actually guess the name of the relic. We're playing the whole round here.
Okay.
This staff blazes with vibrant warp flame. As soon as its master takes up the staff, he too is wreathed in the same demonic fire, though no harm befalls him. From within this magenta inferno, the relic can hurl searing gouts of Tzeentch's pink fire, turning armor to ash and immolating or irrevocably mutating the flesh beneath with coruscating, empiric flames. What relic is this?
Man, I've looked at that relic like 2 times ever. I think it's like the Staff of Everchange.
You dum-dum.
What is it
You don't know the
called?
first thing about demons, the Staff of Everchange? No, it's the Everstave. Well, also,
I was actually kind of close. That's closer than I thought.
No, you get 0 points for that. In fact, you get -9 for being close but off is like the worst possible way to please Tzeentch.
Never say ever, I guess. Am I right, everyone?
Yeah.
Cue the laugh track.
And never say Everstave in your list, because what the relic does, it's +1 to cast.
Smite.
No, it's not +1 to cast. It's +1 to cast Smite.
Yeah, it's +1 to cast Smite, which is
Who printed this garbage?
Yeah, if it was like roll an extra dice on Smite or something, you might, as a joke at a friend's
like
birthday party, you know,
or you're playing
run
that, or you want to nerf yourself. I mean, this is just, imagine, I wonder if there's a single human being on the planet that would pay 1 CP for this in the new Nephilim world. Is there someone, hold up, actually go right now in the comments. If you have ever, since the Nephilim book came out, paid 1 CP for the Everstave, tell us about that story. I want to know what happened. What got you to that sad point where you thought paying a CP for the Everstave was a good idea?
Hold on, I had an idea.
It's a bad idea. I don't know what the idea is. I guarantee you it's a bad idea.
So in order for your Lord of Change to super smite, you need to roll a 9, right?
We're moving on. This is, I can just see where this is going, and this is not the
8 is far more statistically likely than 9, my friend.
Cool.
So
you know what else is better than +1 to cast 1 spell? A 3-up invuln.
No, forget about
it. Or like
it.
turning off 1.
So hold on. Let me complete my ultimate combo here.
I'm mad just listening to this.
And then we get that. Then we get that trait. We get that warlord trait. It's called like Lore Master of Tzeentch, and we're gonna add 6 inches onto the range of our smite, and then we're taking the staff, so we have like a stupidly long range smite. We can just smite them from the other side of the table, baby. It's cannonball smite time.
But you can do all of that while having a 3-up invuln.
But you could also do all of that while having +1 to cast on the smite. Moving on.
So after Wallace is out here advocating for the Everstave, we're now going to switch to our next topic, which is an expert perspective on how to play demons in the Nephilim season. If we have any credentials left, I beg you to stick around and listen to what Wallace and I have to say about playing demons. We collectively have probably half a thought here. So let's talk about the Nephilim season.
Yeah.
So just a quick recap for people that haven't been following things closely. The main changes that affect demons. You can now take unlimited faction secondaries. Demons got their own faction secondaries, which felt beautiful. Demons also, just like every other faction, now start with 6 CP and have to pay for any warlord trait and relic. And now they gain 1 every command phase.
Yep.
The main change that affects demons is demons loved to spend CP pre-game. We no longer can, because you literally cannot spend more than 6. And after you buy a warlord trait and a relic, you start with 4 instead of 12. Wallace, I think the internet has kind of lost its mind about demons in Nephilim. I still think they're a fine playable faction. Talk to me your first impressions.
So demons
are these days.
Yeah, demons are still going to be more challenging to do well with. I think just because you have to really, really understand the faction and what it's trying to do on a minute level in order to juice out those power gamer wins. If you're not
to really understand the mission, you can't show up and just be like, I'm just going to roll up with my demons and we're just going to figure things out on the fly. You have to have a game plan. It has to be a good game plan.
Right. And you're not just going to be able to roll over some of the same lists you could before. Like, I always felt like Necron was a free win for most demon builds, and now that's going to be one of your more challenging matchups.
Well, before we move on, Wallace, I think we've all agreed that Custodes, even when they were kind of top of the meta, were not an auto win, but were an auto win for demons. Do you still feel that way?
Yes, because Custodes have gotten way more. I've actually been talking with some the top Custode players that are still hanging around in the faction recently. They're telling me that kind of the way that they've adjusted their list is they just want to table people, and that's been their focus. So they're really heavy on the bike builds now, and the Caladius
builds. Yeah, the Caladius too.
Yeah, the Caladius is kind of being
up.
replaced with dreadnoughts, and in anything that's like dreadnoughts and bikes and it's a bunch of elite damage and meltaguns or whatever, you're just like, cool.
You literally can't lose. I mean,
well, you can't lose with the horde demon builds. If you're bringing seeker spam and you run into Custodes bikes, it gets a lot harder on you.
Well, if you are bringing seeker spam, you're an absolute legend and you're a winner in our hearts. You may not be a winner on the tabletop, may not be a winner in Nephilim, but you're a winner of the coolest person to ever play 40K. So big shout out to you, our seeker spam friends.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some lists that are kind of archetypes that okay, Wallace, I know you have a list you've been super excited about and has been crushing people in testing. Before we get into that list, I want to bring up a few points for everyone at home that might not have been following the minutiae of Nephilim. One thing that's very important to note these days is you can bring a few outside sources of help because the Demon's data sheets aren't amazing. You can bring a Knight's Detachment for 3 CP. That's a Dreadblade. Or Korvax if you're running Disciples of Bellicor.
Yep.
And these knights you can bring up to 3 small knights or 1 big knight. And we'll get back to this later, of course, including in your list. But there's a lot of very well-tuned data sheets and combos in knights. So simply replacing some demons points with knights is probably a good thing. Also, there's a little 9-wound character who can solo entire armies called Abaddon the Spoiler. They can now bring as a Supreme Commander in a demon's army. Now, if you bring him, you still get your faction secondaries. You can still buy a warlord trait. Its rules is written, it's a little unclear whether or not you can take a relic, but a relic is not really important for demons. We kind of have an advantage in that our kind of warlord traits and relics are so bad we're not beholden to paying CP. Wallace, is there a list you have planned which might use primarily demons but also bring in some outside sources of help?
Yeah, I think every god has play right now, and I think Disciples of Bellicor has play right now. And I've been experimenting with a lot of those different builds. And I want to talk about each of them, and I want to talk about why there's the one I'm really excited about, which is why this is the Sneech episode. It's a Sneech list, obviously. That's the spoiler.
Sure.
So first of all, Disciples of Bellicor player here. I think they're a very, very powerful army. I have play tested the army now with CSM included and without. And I will say they definitely have taken a hit in pure demons. You lose access to a lot of your most powerful strats by going pure demons, but if you don't go like one pure battalion with your disciples list, you do lose your faction secondaries.
And that's, before we move on, that's kind of the key sticking point. So over the last few weeks, obviously the Cast Space Marines Codex. I played a lot of Cast Space Marines over the last year. I'm super excited about the new book. Been doing a ton of play testing. I haven't played Disciples or Demons as much over the last few weeks. Is that not a almost insurmountable issue to lose your faction secondaries? Because the core one, they've lost Stranglehold, which was literally an auto take for you previously with Disciples of Bellicor. What secondaries are you taking with a mixed list these days?
Right. So here's the deal. So if you go pure demons, you can go with or without knights. If you go with knights, you want to raise your wound characteristics up, and you're not going horde style. And that list likes beasts again. Your beasts are back in the list. So the knights beast list. A lot of people
back in town. The beasts are back in town.
That's the thick disciples list, and the thick disciples list is good for a laugh. I don't actually think it's going to win you a major event. I don't think it's going to win you a GT. I think it's something that is fun to pal around with, but it isn't all that great. So then I played the horde list, the pure horde list that we were running before, the one I brought to Seattle. It's still strong because pinks are still strong, and still most factions have no way to deal with it. But some do, and that's the thing, is it's kind of playing a skew list, and it's playing a skew list in the same way that knights do, but with less options to outplay, because losing that master of possession, which enabled all these crazy combos that I've talked about, made you lose a lot of your ability to outplay or find unique angles in your bad matchups. And because of that, now it feels even more like a rock, paper, scissors list, which is really lame.
Well, and we'll quickly talk about the Master Possession. The main change was previously you had the spell Sacrifice, where the Master Possession could hurt a pink horror unit that had been teleported. You could split in front, have a 5 or 6, or have a very short charge, because you're getting a bunch of extra movement. Now the Master Possession, his rule got changed. He now selects a heretic to start his unit, besides cultists, I believe. So it can't be used on pink horrors. You can't use it to get extra movement on your demons, which is a very significant nerf for that style list.
And you lose your faction secondaries if you bring him. So you lose your Reality Red Bull, which Reality Red Bulls, that's the one that's giving you like 10 to 15 victory points every game.
Oh, it's an amazing secondary. It's an amazing Stranglehold replacement.
Yeah, so that was why Pure Demons was selling itself to me. Okay, so that's the first thing. Is I was evaluating the faction secondary. So what I found is while Reality Rebels is a very reasonable secondary, it's a very strong one. Any of the horde builds are going to give your opponents 15 victory points or close to 15 victory points on no prisoners. And the challenge there is I'm thinking to myself now, well, what if I trade my consistent ability to do the secondary for their consistent ability to do a secondary against me? So what if I rebuilt the list, made it so no prisoners is less of a guarantee and it's much harder to get?
Sure.
And I found something else to kind of replace that. And what would replace that? Well, if I wanted to replace that, I need to be able to do other core secondaries, other like generic secondaries, and grind them down. I need to be able to kill stuff, which my list struggled to kill stuff. So that leads me to Mixed Disciples. I think Mixed Disciples is the best way to play them because it can absolutely just table your opponent.
So here's my first concern here, and that is a lot of the cast-based units you want to bring are still sources of no prisoners. Units like Legionaries, Terminators, I think, are very strong.
They still give points.
Yeah, but it's probably less per point. You're not getting as many wounds per point, which I think is really contributing. Okay,
precisely.
I'm into that.
Yeah, so Mixed Disciples of Be'lakor, and you're teching into access to things like Terminators or Legionaries or Havocs, or even just doing the Obliterators, and then you can read them in shade and have them as a firing point in the middle of the table.
Yeah. No, that's spicy. Yeah.
It's spicy. It becomes a lot more elite as well. And because it's a lot more elite, you're able to play the trade game a little bit better. You're not just putting a big dumb wall of horrors in their face. And yes, you have less consistent secondaries than most of the top tier factions, but you can also just like punch the top tier factions in the face, and you can win games by, outplaying or outpositioning them. So I think it's quite good.
Let's talk about that for a second. You talk about secondaries. What kind of secondaries are you looking for? A pure demons list and a mixed disciples list. Let me give you my theory here. I think psychic secondaries are very good for us, like psychic interrogation. Warp ritual, I think almost always taking one of those two, unless it's a matchup that really forbids it, like Thousand Suns.
Yeah.
I think banners is looking beautiful.
Yep.
I think the demons secondary, like Despoiled Reality, where you actions on objectives outside of your deployment zone, I think it's fine. I think it's not great.
The horde demons do that well, yes, because your pinks aren't going anywhere.
Well, especially on player place terrain, I think it's much stronger. We can place a little wall around the objectives just outside your deployment zone. I think Reality Rebels, drinking your Reality Red Bull, beautiful if you're playing pure demons. I think that third secondary can be a little bit tough when you're running a mixed list. What's your third secondary there?
So you do shadow operations, you can do No Mercy, No Respite, and you can do Warpcraft.
You're
You also
like a grind them down type deal?
Yeah, I'm thinking a grind them down game plan. You also can do Battlefield Supremacy, like Engage isn't bad. You have a lot more small MSU units that can go score you Engage.
Yeah, the only thing that hurts me about Engage is being wholly within and outside of 6. Like you can't have like a big bloodletter bomb go in there, but if you have one guy stringing out the midfield objective, you're in a bad spot there.
Yeah, but it's a much smaller unit style. So when you're doing mixed disciples, that's not as much of an issue. So I've done a playtest game with it, and it felt fine. And the thing was, I played again my practice games. I've been doing a lot of practice games against Sisters because there's not a lot of Sisters players in my local meta. So I've been trying to get more games in. So in my practice games against Sisters, the mixed disciples of Bellicor list actually felt super good. But
I think part of it too is you think Sisters are one of the top armies on the Nephilim world. So I think if you can practice against them and feel a good matchup, feel confident there, that's a really good starting point for a list.
Right. And I think they're good. I think you can do well. I think you can win like up to a GT event with them, or place very well at like a major if you know what you're doing. So I think they're strong factions. So I'd like to move on from Disciples because I can talk about them all day and I don't want to get too deep into the rabbit.
Pure Demons list.
Yeah, so let's go back to...
We've probably done more Disciples content than the rest of the internet combined. So Pure Demons, what are you thinking?
Pure Demons. So I play tested a list with Scabiethrax. So Scabiethrax has long been a meme. Big boy. He is a big, nurgly Lord
the biggest
of War.
Of boys, the thickest of boys, the juiciest of boys.
And you know I love him. You know when I saw that point drop, I had to try him out. You know, I played him at 475 when I was bringing my narrative Nurgle list.
Yeah.
And back then, I was winning games with it, mostly because I had Nurglings at 18 points per model at that period in time. And they paid. It was. And they paid for me to bring Scabiethrax as a big, expensive, like melee threat character with some whatever shooting, and he passed around a pretty decent -1 to hit buff. Like, it was a fun piece, but I always felt like he did something. Every game I brought him, he did something. And now it's almost changed where it's like I still want the Nurglings when I bring Scabiethrax, but now Scabiethrax, his point cost reduction is paying for those Nurglings. And when I think about Scabiethrax's points, it's now similar to something like a Rampager, like a Knight Rampager. And I started in my head evaluating, you know, the differences between the two, how they're similar, or which one's better. And I actually think Scabiethrax, in a lot of ways, stacks up pretty decently into a Knight Rampager.
Well, especially because you're not playing 3 CP to bring him, or additional CP to juice him up. He just shows up with his data sheet and says, I'm big, I'm farty, and I'm ready to party.
And I'm ready to party.
This is the Scabiethrax way.
He also has a 2d6 blast flamer.
Oh, it's so good. It's like the really best gun in the game, basically.
It's got high rend, high strength, and damage too. And it makes him hard to charge. It makes him scary when he drops in because he can drop that on. And it's rend too, I think. So you know, Armor of Contempt isn't getting just a big save against it, which is nice. It forces a lot of dice.
Well, here's a list I think is weirdly good. We're not going to go in depth on this, but a list with Mortarion as the Warlord, you can buy all his Warlord crates for 1 CP. Scabiethrax and Super Heavy because you get them for 0 CP because they share keywords. And a mixed Nurgle detachment, so you gain the stratagems already. So something like Plague Burst Crawlers, some Bloat Drones, Epidemius, maybe Bellicor. I think a list like that, especially with Tau getting nerfed, and Admech really falling out of the meta. So there's less things that can just one-shot more to your Scabiethrax. That's a real list. Like
that's 100% a real list. And so that was part of what I was looking at.
So good.
I was looking at that, and I was also looking at him plus I was looking at what I called Scabadon, which is him and Abaddon. And then I like Scabadon. It felt good. I was looking at Scabadon. I was also looking at Scabiethrax with Dreadblades. Both of those seem pretty strong.
I'm into it.
So I play tested a game with Scabiethrax with Dreadblades. I chose Bold Tyrants, which is the one that gives you the bonus AP, I believe.
Yeah, extra AP within 18 inches. On a range.
Yes. And I took some Shooty Knights. So what I did is the Shooty Knights, I waited to expose them till they exposed their guns. Then I would use them to trade off some of their guns, and then Scabiethrax would like come out and do stuff. And the thing about Scabiethrax that's really cool that people don't think of is, yes, he is 21 wounds, so he can't be obscured, but he can deep strike. And really importantly, he's really short, so you can hide him.
He's a short boy, yeah.
You can hide him on most ITC tables. Literally go around an ITC hall, find spots where you could fit a Scabiethrax. There's a weird amount of ruins that are literally like windowless ruins that will hide your Scabiethrax. So
Scabiethrax he's a little tuna can. Let's just
Scab Daddy.
He's a little chode. We can go ahead and say it here.
Yeah, he's not quite bloated. He's not quite bloated.
Yeah.
He's a little chubby, but he's not bloated.
Well, and don't forget, there is a way to advance and charge him. Do you want to explain this, Wallace?
Oh, yeah. So he got the Great Unclean One keyword, which means you can summon in Sloppity Bile Piper. And if you do, it will give you an advanced and charge on your Scab. And that actually gives him a pretty big threat range. So what I like to do is I like to pay some CP to deep strike him. I'll deep strike him in like a good spot, and then the following turn I'll get a big advance and charge off on people. Or I'll deep strike him and have him vomit and then do a bunch of spells. You know, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with him.
Yeah. And here's the thing, in a list like Mortarion, Scab Daddy, and a Demon's Detachment, you're starting with 6 CP. We'll start with 5 because by Mortarions. So you can easily afford 2 CP to deep strike Scabiethrax with a Demon Stratagem. Remember, you're not paying reserves, you're paying the Demon Stratagem, which is a true 9-inch away deep strike. There's definitely some spice there. I'm fully into that.
So Scabadon pretty strong, Scabiethrax with Dreadblade's pretty strong, and then I built a horde of Plague Bearers around him. If you do a mixed Nurgle detachment, you could bring like Marines, which are good.
All sorts of fun stuff.
Nurgle Legionaries could be good.
Okay. Well, so we've talked a lot about Nurgle. I don't want to dwell too much on that god when it's really Tzeentch's day.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Let's talk about the horror of running a Tzeentch list these days. I love that list you came up with. I really love it on the table.
Let's so good.
What you're thinking for a good demons mono god list these days.
So the backdrop was me having tried that Nurgle list, honestly, because I had tried the Scabiethrax plus Dreadblades list with the Bold Tyrants, and I really liked it. I really liked having the Knights with that backup shooting, because it's easy to find ways to put melee threats into a demon list, and it's a lot harder to find ways to put, shooting in there. Like high AP shooting. High AP shooting, I should say.
Okay, well, that was good. Let's not disrespect the Skull Cannon, a legend which has carried demon shooting for a long time now, or at least long range, because
Or the mythical Soul Grinder.
Which everyone carries 3 of in their summoning box.
But yeah, having had the experience with it, War Dogs are nice because you can hide them. You commit them when you need to. They make it so all those armor lists out there, or the mechanized lists out there, go from being sometimes a very difficult matchup to a pretty easy one.
Okay.
And they almost always make their points back. So I really like them a lot. So having tested with them with the Nurgle list, I was like, well, I want to try this with some other demon builds. And what I brought them with was a very simple concept. Okay. I was thinking, what is the best unit in the Demon Codex? What would you say the best unit is, Mike?
Well, I mean, besides the Soul Grinder, which crushes all competition, I would say probably a mix between Bellicor and Horrors. Probably is more. It depends on the list.
It depends on your build, but I would definitely say Horrors are. I think Bloodletters.
Yeah, that was good. Best say Bloodletters, I think, are one of the few data sheets that's actually just good for its points of demons. But okay, you can't build a whole list out of Bloodletters in the same way you can Horrors.
Yeah, and Bloodletters require CP investment. So for a unit that's cheap, has an invuln save, has objective secured, has wonky ways you can use their rules through splitting, and has the ability to split, Horrors are the best demons unit, I think.
Yeah.
And so it was a novel. Yeah, it was a novel concept of, what if I took really good data sheets and put them in a Horrors list? And I had already been experimenting with this for a while, where I couldn't figure out what the right premium unit was to fit with the Horrors to make it work. Because what I've really wanted to do for a while is bring a Tzeentch battalion in competitive play.
There's a lot of times where I would end up having to sacrifice that concept in order to bring bloodletters or something else that does damage. I tried doing it with the Lord of Change, but he was just too overcosted. But
especially now they cost you 3 CP in Nephilim to get Exalted, Warlord Trait, and Relic. It's pretty much non-viable, which pains me because my best painted model is the Lord of Change. I think is the coolest miniature in not just 40k, but in all of tabletop gaming. The Lord of Change is incredible. But yeah, that's not the way you want to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about running this list.
So I want the Zenich, the pure Zenich battalion, for a really simple but important reason. The bonus you get for bringing pure Zenich is wonky, but it is really, really powerful against factions that hit on 2s. Against everybody else, it's pretty much like a meme. It like spikes sometimes and is super good. Other times it does nothing. But if you think about a lot of the factions that are going to be the stronger factions in the game right now, there are these melee factions that are hitting you on 2s and 3s, which means I have more targets on my 2 dice roll for my Zenich Locus of Trickery. And having it is effectively like a better version of -1 to hit on all of my demon units, on all my horror units. And I really, really wanted that because I've been playtesting with it for a while. If I had that in Disciples of Be'lakor, like imagine that. Like imagine, I almost feel like that would be better than the Disciples of Be'lakor -1 to hit. No,
I think you're going too far down that road if you think it's better. But I do think it's it's amazing. Amazing the current meta, because basically all the things you're seeing are melee threats you're seeing.
But I'm not, because
DSM we're gonna see a lot of 2-up to hit.
And this is where you got to give me the credit, because I don't think I am. Because in almost every time I've brought pink horrors in that Disciples list, my job is to put them in my opponent's faces like a wall and contest them on the midfield objectives. So I almost never got that Disciples buff. And there were so many scenarios where I was like, man, if I could just reduce the efficiency of these attacks instead, I would be making this horror blob, which is already a monstrosity, you know, like essentially 16% more survivable. And that concept is really powerful. Yeah, there's going to be times when you roll a 1 on the trickery dice, but the majority of the time you're not going to be doing that. You're going to be hitting other numbers.
Sure. So just to clarify for folks listening at home that aren't big fans of math, I don't blame you, even as someone that loves math. A little over 2/3 of the time, you're going to get a 2-up, as you're going to avoid a 1. So the vast majority of the time, you're going to, if they're hitting on a 2, which a lot of armies are in melee with their threats you to worry about, you're going to get some sort of value out of that. And a little over half the time, you're going to be, even on a 3-up, you're still denying one of those top 4 dice, the 3, the 4, the 5, or the 6. So really, even in matchups where it's not great, you're still almost always getting some value. There's really any melee army these days is going to hit on a 3-up or a 2-up. There's really no melee threats we're scared of that hit on 4s.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, really good locus. Okay.
And so, okay, so that's the concept. The concept is I like Zenich battalion. The concept is what if I put better data sheets alongside it, which we can do now. So literally, I was talking about bringing that Lord of Change for 300 points as like my premium removal unit, and I was taking like the Mortal Wound Lord of Change to make it work. That list was already not bad with the Lord of Change, but I just saved myself a bunch of CP and made it better by putting Abaddon in the place of the Lord of Change. Like Abaddon's data sheet is crazy, and alongside horrors, they're perfect. They're the perfect screening unit for him, and on top of that, he's the perfect like synergy piece to go along with them, because he's the countercharge threat that you need to protect them. So if they charge into one of my horror squads, I have this character that's going to pick up the unit that made that charge, which makes trading a lot harder. And so Abaddon plus horrors is an innately strong concept. So what did I want to put alongside this? Because I needed more teeth, but I didn't want to give up faction secondaries, because Zenich does those faction secondaries the best. Like you mentioned, the Despoilers one is actually, you have to sit on an objective until your next command phase. Normally those suck,
those don't suck on splitting horrors, because you can just choose to have that unit not be able to die if you need those victory points.
And for them to deny you the points, they have to way overcommit. They have to get like a lot of shots lined up, and at the point you're like, cool, I'm just gonna pull my 80-point unit, and you've wasted an entire shooting phase. Fantastic if you know how to use it well. So
and you can just bury Abaddon in a unit of horrors, and then
they're never shooting through the screen. You always decide when you want to give up the points.
And so a lot of people have this idea of like, well, we'll chip down Abaddon and we'll send in one of my melee units to finish him off. And you just can't do that against this list because you can perfectly screen him with them. And then I was like, okay, what's the next step to this? So the next step to this was I brought a Dreadblade detachment with those bold tyrants. And now I have really strong anti-armor shooting. I was bringing brigands, but you can swap it to stalkers or even carnivores.
Are pretty good for the points too.
I was thinking about that as well. It merits more playtesting. I really liked the brigands because you can kind of just like hide them behind obscuring, and then the next turn send them out once they come into the midfield, and then you have like the melta shots. It makes you really good into night lists. It makes you really effective into armor of contempt lists with the chain guns going up in AP. So yeah, I brought the Dreadblades with Abaddon, and then I brought 3 units of pink horrors, 2 units of 10 pink horrors with trumpets, 1 unit of 20 with the instrument, and then 2 units of a mix of pink and brimstone horrors, 9 brimstones and 1 pink. The pink is just there as an optional split if you needed it, or to help it soak Overwatch if you want to use it as an Overwatch shield. And those 2 cheaper units are like 53 points for the brims plus the pink. Those 2 sit in your backfield as your anchor, your screen, and your thing that holds. And then your 2 10-mans and your 20-man, those are going to be the things that are stringing out or going out to go touch the objectives.
Well, hold up, Wallace. So we have these 5 units of horrors.
Yeah.
Let's quickly talk about the HQs, because I think that's a big piece of this, because people are going to say, well, you're going to add the Lord of Change or whatever, you're going to add like the HQs, you're going to get way too expensive, you're going to have splitting points. What kind of HQs are you bringing in this list?
No Lord of Change. Right now, I've been playtesting with a Change caster, and Fluxmaster may be better. I like Fluxmasters quite a bit.
I do like them too.
Yeah, so a Fluxmaster might actually be better than the Change caster. I'm just messing around with the Change caster for now. And then I was bringing the Changeling. So now,
so good, so beautiful.
Yeah. So now I have
a model to boot. I just have to say it, amazing model to boot.
Exactly. So now I have a 6-up Feel No Pain and an effective -1 to hit in all of the matchups that I'm going to struggle into on all of my horror squads. And like I said, I have that big 20-man unit. I can like hide a portion of it behind terrain and then string the front of it out to keep touching objectives. And it allows you to play the mission really well. And then really importantly, on top of that, you have really threatening things that say, if you push into my castle, I can punish you really hard. And that's not something demons innately have. Like, that's not something you can get in their codex. That has always been their weakness. So
especially
now I'm playing
demons.
Right. And now I'm playing a horde list that does that has better defensive buffs and utility on the horrors. And I have 520 summoning points. So I have those 5 units of horrors, those 2 characters to fill out that battalion. I have those Dreadblades, and I have Abaddon, and then I have 520 splitting points, which is almost 90 wounds that you can allocate to pretty much any of those squads you want, which this is the thing that's so good about horrors. Your opponent might commit enough units to make your splitting really ineffective on one of those units, but they're not going to be able to do that on all of them. Like, if you're playing the game correctly, you're not going to have all of them be able to be exposed by their entire gun lines, right? So when they do that and it becomes inefficient to split, just don't split. You lost 10 guys. Who cares? You can summon more in. And that's what makes it so nutty. So I've play tested this list now 6 times against what are the top lists. And I say that by pulling these lists from people that are competitive players. I've pulled a few Art of War lists, like people that I trust to know that they know how their faction works.
And stuff, doing well in tournaments. Yeah.
Right. And in play test against those, it is currently 6-0. It is actually insane. It is so strong into a lot of what's meta right now. Like Necron and Sisters both really struggle into this. Like you're going to bring your spam Melta into my horror splitting list. And they have like, you know, those Seraphim units that can actually put the hurt on the horrors, but they're not going to clear out a 90 split squad very easily. Sure. And you can pick that unit up. Like, yeah, it's point efficient, but so am I. So
yeah. Well, and part of it too is
always strong, man.
When I was playing Pure Demons a while ago, I thought one of the worst matchups was melee Marines, armies like Blood Angels, or White Scars, or like hybrid Marines, like Iron Hands that would have mixed like Vanguard vets, units that were durable, had good power armor, and just put out massive volume of attacks that would just hit your demons, and then you can't pick them up, and then they just pick up your demons again next turn. They just keep doing that for 5 turns. Unlike White Scars were really bad. I think Abaddon's a perfect counter to that. Because if you think about it, he's going to charge a unit, he's going to kill it in his turn. And then with your using good fight phase, remember, the trick is you can do, is there a unit that's Abaddon going to kill? Also charging a pink squad. Abaddon kills the unit, and the pinks pile and consolidate. You've got a little ring around, it's splitting points. They're never going to get in the shooting phase. So what you're doing is he's killing a unit every one of your turns. And then in their turn, when they charge a unit of Sanguinary Guardian or whatever, they do those 3 wounds, cool. Then Abaddon's going to smack it back. Because again, in this list, he's always given himself his super chapter master hit and wound rerolls. With immortal wounds on 6s too at the main attack, he's always killing like 6 or 7 Sangard units easily. And he's picking those up every turn. So he's it's going to take them 3 of their own turns to kill him. But also he's killing a unit, or basically unit turns 2 through 5 in your turn. He's basically picking up all of those units that used to run over you. They're now just literally going in the dumpster bin. He's a hard counter to your counter, which is a great tech piece. And what I love about bringing the War Dogs too is part of it is almost when people play demons, they can disrespect us and just not worry about firing lanes and just kind of position for maximum offense. But because you have enough firepower to keep the fear of the dark gods in them, they can't optimize their offense because they have to play some defense in terms of positioning, which means you're taking less damage, which kind of really gives you defensive buffs in kind of non-obvious ways. I think it's a great piece. And the fact that we're able to take these Agents of Chaos and Dreadblades and Fallen Heroes and keep our faction secondaries, so good.
And you keep your faction secondaries, and the layers to this keep getting crazier. So you have Abaddon. Abaddon is like the perfect summoning unit.
You can take anything.
Anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can take anything. So you have Abaddon, and sometimes you'll just stage him in the middle as like this heroic intervention threat, and he's just going to be summoning stuff around the table to harass on objectives. And he gives you access to all the gods. And on top of all of this, I'm in such a good mood talking about this. You can go from like, oh, I'm the horde player this matchup, to I am going to table my opponent. And you can summon flamers, and you can just have that be what you're doing. You have 520 points. You can summon 3 flamer bombs. You can go turn after turn of dropping in flamers. They get progressively harder to deal with, especially once you start getting Abaddon in their face, because now they have to deal with all these 4+ invuln 2 wound models gliding around, hiding behind obscuring, and Abaddon running at them.
Yeah.
And the flamers are just terrifying with the flames of change 1 CP strat. So it's like I have these summoning points, and I can just choose to, instead of playing a horde splitting game against the wrong opponent for it, I can just choose to make them not be able to have models that do things. Like I can just drop in flamers and pick up their squads really easily. And you know what? A lot of, again, what I've been practicing into is what I consider the top tier factions and lists.
Sure.
And it honestly, like some of those matchups feel easy doing this. And I haven't had that experience playing demons in almost an edition.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think part of it too is I think people are kind of stuck on demons lists like keeper spam. People be like, oh, you can't exalt like 4 keepers and buy them all relics anymore pregame. I'm like, what are we losing? We're losing a list that was never, I don't want to say never that good, but has not been good for a long time.
Not. I would say. I would say the bridge for good versus like excellent are kind of different, and I don't know. Like you could argue it's
like
good.
It was a good list in the sense of you didn't have to be an amazing player to do well with it.
Yeah.
But I think the horrors list with Abaddon and War Dogs is definitely a higher upside list in the sense of maybe the keepers list on average would have a higher win rate, but I don't really care about win rate when evaluating lists. I think about, does this list, because again, if you're a really good player, kind of like you can beat like 60, 70% of people, just not really worrying about what your list and their list is. So you have to bring tech to beat those tougher opponents. And this list has that tech and has the flexibility to win those matchups in a way that the keeper list never really did. So I'm super excited. I think one more archetype, again, I know the episode's getting a bit long. I don't want to keep people here all day.
It's a good reason to keep people here, though.
Yeah. Trapped in the Forbidden Palace of Tzeentch. But I think one list I think is pretty good is a Slaanesh Demon focus list that has a lot of the same tech. I love that excitement, Wallace. Has a lot of the same tech you're talking about. You can bring Abaddon, you can bring War Dogs. But I think a lot of Demonettes are very good.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. That was so like when I was cycling to the final, god in our list that we hadn't really looked at. I mean, you can look at Khorne. I know one of our friends, Brian, well-regarded chaos player, currently top chaos. He's trying to make pure Khorne demons work.
Also, shout out, all three of us are in the top 4 of chaos right now, so
it's true.
It's a fun group chat. Well, let's talk about keep this excitement going.
But Demonette spam, Demonette spam is so good. It's so good, and it's so underrated.
So good. You bring some 10 and 20 bricks. I think what's great about this list is when you have Abaddon and you have Celeste, you have a lot of like absolute trucks in melee. People get this. Celeste has strength 8, flat 3 damage, just picks up armigers like nothing. And you have these 2 untargetable guys moving up the board that can move through walls, can hit super hard, can countercharge super hard. We also have a lot of this OBSEC that's fast, can do actions, can do Nephilim stuff very well, can do Despoiled Reality or whatever that action secondary is. Part 2 is Slaanesh does have this -1 to leadership aura, which does make the leadership secondary a bit more viable. I'm still not taking in most games, but at least opens it up as much more of a possibility than it was before. I will say that.
And the Demonettes, they had an FAQ change today that allows you to now charge. Essentially, you could, if you were really good, screen walls so that people couldn't fit their bases through them. That's no longer a thing because now you have a 2-inch engagement through walls or through a terrain piece. And that is really good for Demonette lists that previously would get screened out pretty hard by people that were doing that.
For sure.
So charges got a lot easier. So Demonettes can play a really nice game. Like I'm talking like an 100 Demonette, 120 Demonette list, and then you have extra pieces that are helping it. And like Celeste is perfect for that. Abaddon's actually a great ad for that as well, as he is for pretty much all chaos lists right now.
Yeah.
So,
and the crazy thing, if you're a Celestial list, if you bring Abaddon, you can still summon a Flamer Brick out of nowhere. You still every god stratagems. Because again, a Demon's Detachment, even if it's mono god, still gives you access to stratagems from every god. So I think, again, we're going to start wrapping this up, but I think I'm almost a bit confused because all the talk I see on the internet about demons right now is very negative. They're like, oh, faction just might as well have squatted them, unplayable until they get a new codex. And now you and I are super excited about the codex. But I think right now the faction is honestly genuinely exciting. Because here's the thing, right? We've been playing Demons All Edition without faction secondaries. And now we're in a world where we basically lost a lot of stuff from Nephilim, but we gained faction secondaries. Every 9th edition codex got theirs tweaked, maybe buffed, maybe nerfed, but they're kind of playing the same game. We're showing up with faction secondaries for the first time, which is a massive buff. Wallace, I genuinely can't wait to get my demons on the table, which is something it's crazy that we're sitting here late 2022, still coming up with new demons ideas. I love, the creativity demons players have. And again, don't be discouraged. Wallace and I absolutely think you can still win games with demons. Are they the best army in the game? No. Do you have to get a little creative? Well, okay. Wallace,
I honestly think I think it might be, honestly. Like, I played it against the Necron, like, terror list, and it was beating the shit out of it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, man.
Well, so you could take a list which is literally like one Zinch HQ and a super heavy auxiliary or auxiliary detachment, and then like 1900 splitting points. You'd be like, wow, this is a perfect list.
This is
here.
beautiful.
I don't know if I
It's
can trust you
perfect.
on this. But don't be discouraged. At the end of the day, it's a game. If you're good at this game, you can still do a lot of crazy things on the tabletop. Go out there, keep waging the long war, keep battling in the Immaterium, keep fighting the great game. Get your demons on the tabletop. Let's win some games. This has been Mike and Wallace from Warphammer with a very special 7th episode of Warped Wednesday. We'll see all of you beautiful demonic friends next week.
I love all of you little gribblies out there. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.